This is the voice of Bold Business Radio, program 104, No Excuses. Maxwell Ivey, who goes by Max, is joining me today to talk about excuses. We both believe that it is our responsibility to take the action that we want, and it's our responsibility when we choose not to take an action, to be in support of what we are here to do, the situation we find ourselves in, and the way we actually show up in this world. And we talk about it through excuses today. It can be difficult to face our excuses, and it can be difficult to recognize that no matter how perfect we are, no matter how much we have practiced, that excuses will still pop up because there are so many facets of life. There are so many layers to life that when we think we've mastered something, we know we're doing it, we decide to make a change, we notice that change is starting to occur, and then we make a different choice before we find ourselves in the middle of our excuse. We still have this ability to find other excuses that we didn't know that were there. So to remain open is our responsibility for ourselves and for those around us. Max is a 49-year-old blind entrepreneur. He is at theblindblogger.net, and he grew up in a family of carnival owners. All Max ever wanted to do was continue in his father and his grandfather's footsteps to be part of this family business. Life didn't turn out that way for him because he has found himself blind, because he is unable to run a carnival himself. He has switched to being an inspirational author and blogger. He's going to share with us that there are no excuses, and we explore what excuses are, and we both learned from this conversation. So we are inviting you to join in to that. He's also even figured out a way to stay in the carnival industry, which we don't really talk about today. However, when we really want something and it's a part of who we are, we will find a way. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Max, just before we turned on this recording and we started our conversation, we were talking about meeting people where they are. Tell us your experience of that, because I really feel like it's a great place to start talking about the rest of our conversation about identifying and dealing with our excuses.
Part of this goes back to my first book, Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, A Blind Man's Inspirational Guide to Success. Because when I wrote that book, I made a decision that people even now still tell me I was crazy. I included my email address in the book, and I encourage people to write to me and report on their progress throughout the book. And a few people have done it. A couple of people did it all the way through the 11 exercises I have in the book, but very few people have actually become fast friends and exchange emails, and I get emails or Facebook posts from them all the time like I had actually hoped I would. What I've had to realize is that people, especially nowadays, they don't write letters. Most of them don't send emails. And very few people will have the courage to call you up no matter how often you tell them, you don't need to hire me. I don't need to expect a check from you if you want to talk to me. No matter how friendly and approachable you make yourself, people don't like to call people nowadays. So you have to go, well, if they're following me on Facebook and they're liking my posts, or they're sending me direct messages, or they're commenting on my work, but they're not actually engaging with me directly, they are still people that are loyal to my message. They're interested in what I'm doing. And while they may never actually come out and say it directly, they are being inspired, motivated, affected, whatever word you want to use, by following my progress and seeing how I approach daily challenges and my own fight with excuses. Because no matter how good you get it at realizing that there are solutions out there, there's always going to be a day when you get up in the morning and something hits you at just that wrong particular time in your day, and you're like, oh, heck, what do I do now?
I know. You said something that I thought before we transitioned into excuses that I think is really worthwhile. It's this phrase that came up when I was a wee pup right out of college, just starting my first business. And there was this phrase that people used in the late 90s called lurking. And as technologically advanced as we are, and now we have video and we get to do things like this and have these video conferences, be online, live stream, talk with people, you're right. A lot of people will just be the wallflowers and absorb the information and make an impact in their life. And we may never know the ripple effect of what we are doing.
Yeah, and they will never know how much we wanted for, in some cases, set up nights sweating. Well, why don't they comment on my post? Why don't they send me what am I doing wrong?
It's true. It's true. And so there's a courage there. And before we talk, and a big part of facing our excuses is also having that courage to say, oh, maybe I should reach out to Max. Oh, now's the time that he really impacted me with one of his motivational messages. Maybe a tweet. I mean, that's where we met. We met on Twitter.
Yeah. Twitter is one of those places where I am finding a lot of people send automated messages when you follow them.
Yes.
I hate those things because to me, it's a wasted opportunity. It's also kind of a way to be brave and cowardly at the same time. It's a way of sending a message out there, but not really connecting with the person, because I'll be honest, I don't send direct messages to many people who follow me. I look at or I read the profiles of all the people that Twitter says have followed me. And if somebody has a really interesting profile tagline, then I'll go and check out one of their tweets. And if they said something in one of their tweets that I really like, I may share that tweet, and then I may send them a direct message. But if I send them a direct message, as you can attest to this, one, it will not be short, it will not be 140 characters, and it will not be impersonal.
And in fact, I used our Twitter connection and reached out by LinkedIn because that's how I found your website. And I can't remember if I actually reached out to you from LinkedIn or from your website, but I know that I started on Twitter, and you're right. I wanted to make it personal. I wanted to take the time to connect in a way that you would see I'm interested in what I found about you. It is a hard thing for a lot of people to do, to start a conversation with a stranger. And I feel like in some cases I'm like, oh, we've all heard this. We need to have conversations. We need to, and listen to the words need coming out of there. Really, we're creating opportunity. So do we want opportunity? Do we want connection? Do we want what might come next? And as long as we keep our mouths closed and our voices off, we're saying no, effectively. We don't want those things.
No, and something else you mentioned earlier when you were talking about us having this conversation is, and I've talked about this quite often in my many interviews, is that I get a personal energy. I come away from every interview, even the interviews where I thought I really stunk the joint up, or that particular host didn't get the best out of me today, I still come away with a new energy level I didn't have before that conversation on that day. And I can go back to these links from shows I've been on and listen to them again even after the fact, and have my mood elevated and get this positive, optimistic, that was a year ago or a month ago or 3 years ago, but it's just the way the actual conversation and exchange, even listening to it replayed, can affect your mood.
Before we can talk about how to shift, we really have to face the fact we all have excuses. We all have excuses. I can even start today. I actually have this really cool game on my phone. It's called My Singing Monsters. And it's this game where all you do...
Should I be closing my ears now so I don't remember the name of it and put it on my phone? Is that what we're going here?
All you do is,
you know, I love to sing, as you know, so this could be very dangerous for me.
Oh, believe me, you're walking right at, you're leading me right where I want us to go. And so in this game, all you do, you hatch monsters and then they sing to you. And they love singing so much, they give you these coins, and then you can use these coins to buy them food, which of course, the more food you feed them, the more they love singing and the more money they give you to get more food. It's and it's hilarious because sometimes I use this. I have to really check in. Sometimes I do it because I really like to hear the melody that these monsters are singing. And sometimes it's because I want to help them out. And even though they're little bits on the phone, they're telling me, feed me, feed me. And there's a part of me that goes, okay, I'll feed you. And then there's this other, then there's this other one of, I'm doing this because I don't want to do anything else. And all three of those things can happen in the same interaction. And sometimes it's definitely I just don't want to do anything else. And being able to find that and recognize it is hard. Do you have a thing that you do that you recognize when you're in an excuse mode?
I've got a little one and I've got a big one I'm going to share. The little one is trivia crack. At one time last year, I was even tweeting when I got to new levels or when I beat somebody on trivia crack. It got to the point where I was even thinking about purchasing coins so I could play longer. I still have it and I still play, but I don't play as often. It's just one of those things you catch yourself doing it and you're like, I know there's things I can be doing that will be moving me closer towards my goal, but right now I just don't feel like it. And the other one, which is a much bigger one, I think I really need to share this as an author because a lot of people are either writing books or aspire to or want to use books as part of their business model. What is it? About a year and a half ago, I wrote It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag, a book about the steps I had to go through before, during, and after having gastric surgery so that I could lose the weight, keep it off, and stay healthy. I wrote that book because the book of stories from my life, the memoir that they say everybody has one of, had become such a big tangled ball of knotted string that I was like, I don't want to fool with this book. Let me write something else.
Yeah.
And I still have a 60,000 word document that isn't anywhere close to being complete, and it doesn't even include any of the stories from the last 3 years. It's from before I don't think there's anything in there even from after I quit carneying and started helping people sell amusement equipment. It's one of those documents, I'm almost afraid to send it to my editor because I don't really want to hear her use those kinds of words. I mean, it would kind of would make me feel bad about her to hear words like that come out of her mouth.
That's funny. You wrote other books to avoid writing your memoir. That's interesting. I will also know when I'm procrastinating something or avoiding something or I have to face an excuse because I start cleaning closets, not just the fronts of closets, but like everything comes out, they're getting sorted, they're doing all, that is somehow cathartic for me. And most of the time it's facing an excuse. It's, holy cow, there's something going on that I really don't want to do. And I have to really think about it. What's the reason? What are the reasons holding me back here?
Right. And that one is even more troublesome for a lot of people, especially for women, because you have this whole idea, I can't be procrastinating. I can't be avoiding something that scares me because I'm doing something necessary. I'm cleaning the closet. I can't be procrastinating because I'm doing something functionary that needs to get done that I'm probably the only person who's going to do.
Oh, Max, that's so true. And we do have to be careful of that. There's another reason I use it though, when I get into those modes is, okay, so I'm avoiding something. What am I avoiding? Am I not ready? Am I a little afraid of it? Am I unsure about the words that actually have to be done? Or I know it's going to be difficult and I know it's going to be hard. And that's really happens when I have to have hard conversations with clients, potential clients, my team members, when I'm really getting ready to bare my heart and soul on this show, I end up cleaning things and it cracks me up. So I'm like, okay, so in those cases, while it might start out as fear, what I have found, at least in myself, is that it turns into something different. It turns into this, okay, I'm doing something. And now because I'm doing something, I'm going to get momentum. And it's through this momentum, I can actually go do this hard thing I must do.
Well, see, what you're doing there is something, I have coined this phrase. So far, nobody has jumped on the bandwagon, so probably haven't heard of it yet. I call it modern meditation. It's where the performance of a routine, meaningless, menial, tedious, bothersome task can free your mind to focus and address something more serious. I call it modern meditation. My first experience with it was petting my dog who, Penny isn't with us anymore, but when she was, she used to set the terms of our relationship to the point if she wanted to be petted, I was going to pet her.
No matter what.
No matter what, exactly. And I finally decided instead of fighting it, I would just accept it and lean into it. And I finally figured out if I just pet this dog for about 15 minutes, I can't do anything on the laptop or online or really have a good conversation. So for 15 minutes, you just pet the dog, breathe in the scent, hear her make those noises she makes when you hit that right spot, And then when the 15 minutes is over, you're ready to go do something.
And she's all the better for it too. I read that blog post about you and Penny, and we had 2 dogs for 18 years. One lived to be 14 and one lived to be 16. And I have to tell you, I know exactly what you mean. And sometimes having something like that, a plant to water, a pet to love on, really, it's a required distraction, and it allows our brains to have a little bit of a rest to go gung-ho. It's almost like a power nap of sorts. Although I am going to use, in our program notes, I'm going to use hashtag modern meditation. And maybe we could even call it modern meditation on Monday, because now everybody can go, here's the busyness that I've got going on, and it's actually helping me get focused.
I hate to admit that I can't remember the particular host's name, but he related a story to me about how he used to have great ideas when he worked part-time at a laundry, and he would have to fold 600 towels a day, every day, 6 days a week. And he said he used to get some of his best ideas that way. I have a friend online who's a swimmer, and she actually had a great conversation on Facebook one day about, I have all these great ideas when I'm in the pool. What do I do about them? And somebody finally told her to just go get a white erase board and lay it by the pool and write the key words of whatever big ideas she had while she was swimming laps.
That's a smart. Was that you? Were you the guy with the idea?
I don't remember. And
Well, that's humble of you not to claim credit.
No, if I was sure it was my idea, I would claim credit for it.
Yeah.
I'm far past false humility, false modesty. I'm really trying to work that whole all shucks, not me thing out of my entire vocabulary and being. So if I had the idea, I'd claim it.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, hey. So let's talk about the elements of an excuse, because, not claiming what we do as our own is also a kind of excuse. So tell us, when you think about excuses, if you were to break it down, what are the pieces of an excuse that we really need to be aware of, not only for ourselves, but also when we're interfacing with another, so that we can better understand and interact with the people we're talking to every day?
Yeah, I was giving this some thought, as you know, from my email, as to actually describing what an excuse is. I mean, people have been saying, if Max can do it, then what is my excuse, for a while now. And I've never really spent a lot of time thinking about what the key elements of an excuse are. It seems to me that the primary thing, though, would be, is it something you are allowing to keep you from taking action? Are you allowing it to keep you stuck in whatever place you are right this minute? Sometimes it can be an assumption about yourself. Sometimes it can be an assumption about the other person if we're talking about conversations and relationships. A lot of times it can just be, it's always been done that way, and you're afraid to question existing possibilities, situations, morals. We have a president of the United States who, no, I'm not going politics on you, who sometimes gets credit and sometimes gets blamed for the fact that he does not hold with all the traditions that go along with the office. And as you know from working with people, there are a lot of people who are stuck, not because they can't do the job, not because they don't have the resources, or maybe they don't have them all right to say, but the real problem is they just can't see the problem, they can't see the situation, and they can't see anything other than the answers that they've already come up with themselves. A lot of times it comes down to, what picture do you have on the box of that puzzle? Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people nowadays don't do puzzles. I understand coloring has come back, but puzzles haven't. You used to have a puzzle and have 2, 3, 500,000 pieces. There'd be a picture on the side of the box. You knew exactly what it would look like when you were through. And I often wonder if a lot of the problem solving and a lot of excuse making has to do with, this is the answer I am expecting to get, or this is the answer I should get, or these are the only answers that I can see because they're the only ones that have ever worked. I think a lot of it is just being trapped in what you've always done, or things that you just can't see yourself doing.
What I hear you saying is that we're limited by our own knowledge. And when we stop seeking new knowledge, we're calcifying our comfort zone.
I think that's a good way of explaining it. I don't think it ends at knowledge. I think it also ends at relationships. One of my biggest assets is something you can't weigh, measure, or count, is the number of people that I have connected with over the years online who have either encouraged or motivated me, or who have offered advice, suggestions, even performed services for me, Sometimes they perform those services at less than what they would have usually charged for the same work. But a lot of times it's the people around you you're getting on the answers you're trying or the ones you have tried that have failed. I've talked to a lot of people. I haven't had to suffer with this myself, but I've talked to a lot of people who say one of their biggest problems when they start something new is their family, their spouse, their former coworkers, because these people are people you've known forever. You would like to think they have your best interest at heart. You would like to think they would offer solutions you're not seeing, but in many cases, they're not motivated to help you find those solutions.
In some cases, they're limited by their own beliefs, and they've decided you're perfectly okay exactly the way you are. And so they inadvertently, carefully hold us back.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the way that you broke that down for us, because if we can think about it within those parts and we're looking at the whole, a place we don't recognize or the excuses are the ones we let other people give us.
George Carlin once did a routine about, I'm going to have to use a bad word here. I hope it don't get us in trouble.
That's okay. Okay.
He used to talk about stuff and shit. He always said, my stuff is stuff, your stuff is shit. A lot of times it comes down to whose idea is it? Whose emotional issue is it? Whose product or service is it? A lot of times it's just a matter of, is it mine or is it yours?
And the perspective that goes with that. There are business owners that come to me that they have started a company and they're in their fourth year and they're not seeing the results they want and they're starting to struggle and they're worried about being able to pay their teams ongoing and it's taking a toll because they're working so much and their families are missing them. There's this dual thing of, I started my business and brought a team together so I can provide for my family, and I'm barely doing that and I'm never there and they're expecting me to be there. It materializes differently for different personality styles and family dynamics, but it takes, it takes a lot of relationship awareness, because I see every day, I see people tell me and I watch them close their doors because they've decided they can't do it. And when I will ask them or talk to them, what's making you make this decision? Sometimes, money is a motivator of that. I'm not making enough money, or I'm bleeding my money out, or have been in the red so long I can't do it anymore. If you look one level deeper, Max, all of them don't have the support of their closest family and friends. And all of them have had other people giving them these excuses. Oh, well, you're just not meant to do that. Oh, well, you'll be better off if you go get a regular job. Oh, well, here's what's best for you. I know what's best for you. And we love them and they know us, and we really have to dig in our feet. We have to dig in our feet and plant ourselves and say, and it doesn't work for me that way.
I recently had this happen to me. Back in May, I went out to do my first public talk in Philadelphia, and while I was gone, I decided to visit a few other places. I ended up spending a week and a half with my brother, Michael, in Florida, and while I'm there, he was like, Max, you graduated from college. You have a degree in something, don't you? I said, yeah, I have a degree in political science. I said, not that I've ever really used it for much, other than I can at least say I completed my degree. It took me 5.5, almost 6 years, but at least I finished. Me and Rocky have that in common. All we wanted to do was finish at some point. He said, well, Max, why don't you apply to some colleges and see if you can't get a teaching job or something? Because, man, it would be great if you had money coming in regular.
Right.
So this is
okay, so you're experiencing it too.
Yeah. And he's somebody who has supported me in the past. He's encouraged me. He's helped me with my websites and things like that. When my family was in the carnival business, we were never what you would call successful. So it's not like he's viewing this from a point of view of people who have had money or who have had stuff, because in many cases, what we had was what we could carry with us at any one time. This is my own brother, and he's my younger brother, and I'm supposed to be giving him advice, not the other way around. But yeah, this even happens to me. And just one thing I want to say before I forget about it. When we were talking about this whole concept of what is an excuse, I hope people understand that I was actually working this through with you. This was our conversation of trying to figure this out, because I don't claim to completely understand what makes an excuse or doesn't make an excuse. I think that it helped me to have you walk me through this discussion. And this won't be the last time that I really need to have this conversation with people. And I hope that at some point we can talk again about fear and excuses, because if you're going to be known as a guy who people say you're like the leader of no excuses, it'd be nice if you really knew what the word meant.
Max, I appreciate not only your honesty, I also appreciate that you recognize there's always more to learn. That's something that we forget. It doesn't matter if somebody else calls us an expert. It doesn't matter if we have decided we are an expert based off of our experiences and our actions. It matters that we are always seeking more knowledge to learn it at a deeper level, what this stuff actually means and how it affects people, because it affects us every single day. I tell you what, excuses are kind of like whatever your vice is. Is it a kind of a candy? Or is it popcorn and crunchy snacks and chips? Or is it that you work out all the time? Whatever you're drawn to when there's any sort of stress that helps relieve that stress is an indication that we have a chance to learn more. And every single time we learn more, it's different because we have a new platform to work from. We all fail at some point in time, whether we call it a challenge or an obstacle or whatever. We're all failing. We all do try things and they work poorly. We try things and they backfire in our face. We try things, right? We've got all these things that we try. So let's just call it what it is. We fail. Here's the thing. The next time we try, the next time we attempt, we now have more information to work from. So we're ahead of the game because we're starting at a new place. We're starting at a new level.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that one for a while. I do agree, though, that we all fail, and I really love this concept that's becoming popular about the whole idea that we should just all decide to fail forward. When I first heard that, like a lot of men, I'm a football fan. When I first heard that, I thought about the great running back Emmitt Smith, who used to say that the important thing for a running back was you're going to get tackled on every play. The important thing is to fall towards the line of scrimmage or towards the end zone when they tackle you. And he is only like one of the 5 best to ever play that position in a professional sport. So I agree with you. We're all failing. The question is does your most recent failure get you to that point where you're afraid to fail again? I'm fixing to use an expression that I've used a lot of times, and people keep telling me, Max, that's not a positive way to look at yourself, but I tell people this all the time. I think I'm just not smart enough to be scared.
Oh, I love that. I think that's brilliant.
I've been told to tell people that I have a fearless soul or that I have a childlike approach to the universe, but I tell people I'm blind rather than visually impaired. I prefer to go with as straightforward an answer as possible. And to me, that's something that just came to my head years ago and I've hung on to it. But yeah, I think often I'm just not smart enough to be scared.
You know what? And I'll bet you there are different areas of life. So I'm listening to you and thinking about this, and there are areas that I want to be perfect. And I must put on a show, and I must have the answers, and I must have confidence, and I will fight. I will fight for anything that gets in the way of potentially shaking that. And then there are other parts where what you're describing is exactly how I am. What's the worst that can happen? I can't believe that everybody's afraid of this, because the worst that can happen is they say no, but I have to open my mouth to find out if it's a yes or a no kind of thing. Whereas other times I'm like, I'm never going to ask because.
And your past comment there brings me into one of my favorite sayings that my daddy used to tell me all the time, which is, Max, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. He liked to turn things around and look at them from a more positive way of thinking about things. Which is why one of the things I have realized is that when it comes to asking other people for stuff, you talked about fear of opening your mouth and putting something out there that scares you. If more people would think about it from the other person's point of view, as opposed to thinking about it from their ego or how they would look, and think about it this way. When you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy that comes from helping someone else.
I really like that. And I like the fact that you're bringing in, when we get in our own way, when we have an excuse, we are getting in the way of genuine connection and relationship and what comes with that. One of the things that I am learning, and I don't know, this is one of these hard things. Okay. So everybody who's listening, you guys, when I bare my soul, this is going to be one of those moments. And it's really hard for me to talk about love or saying, I love you to a friend. And the thing is, when we have a space where we connect, there is an exchange of love that occurs because we really, and I'm going to use the word see, we maybe experience is better. We really experience the other person. We don't have to see him. We don't have to hear him. We don't have to understand him. We just know. And I think that's love. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
I have on a few occasions, but I understand what you're saying. It's one of the things that makes love difficult for all of us is, like many other things in our lives, we are expecting it to be long lasting. We're expecting to have that 30 seconds or a minute or 3 minutes experience that you just talked about there, but we're thinking that's kind of like any other drug. You know, once you experience, you're like, I'd like to feel that way all the time, but it's just not in us as people.
I want to say not with the expectation that we have, and we use it as an excuse to stay disconnected and to stay out of relationship and to stay hidden instead of showing up. Whereas, what if we looked at each moment as an opportunity to love? What if we looked at each moment as an opportunity to be so connected that it doesn't matter how much it hurts or is hard, that there's this built-in empathy and compassion that allows a connection to occur? And maybe it's practicing a series of moments with many different situations that can then bring that love, that experience when we need it most, when we're feeling the most scared, when we recognize we're hidden and not showing up.
You know, that's a very profound thing you just said there, because what you just reminded me of is it's about our expectations. And we live in a society where people have been telling us for years to lower our expectations where it comes to personal relationships and love.
And in business.
That's the problem. We have to expect more out of ourselves and other people and out of these connections with them. If we're setting our expectations so low that 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or an hour is considered good or good enough, then we really are setting our expectations for relationships and human contact in general just sadly sickening way too low.
We're expecting it to happen to us instead of through us.
Yeah, that is so good.
And I want to tie this back to excuses, because when we decide to let other people choose for us, whether we're actively accepting something they've said or their advice, or we're just not going to ask for whatever reason, and we're going to just stay hidden, then what do? Not only in this individual personal network, but in business, we aren't going to connect with the people that really will benefit from the service that we offer, that will get to see a product or a service developed because of an idea we have that can only be voiced by us because of our experience and because of our passion.
That reminds me of something that I've recently had to go through myself as a coach and as a business person. When I started the blindblogger.net about 3 years or so ago, people were like, you know, Max, your life is so inspirational. People are going to want you to help them improve their lives and get unstuck and go after their big goals and dreams. And people enjoy reading my stuff, but that's not what they want me to do for them. What it has turned out that they wanted me to do for them, and it's something that I basically fought and gave away for nothing for over a year before I realized this is something I'm really good at and that people need and will pay me to do for them, is in this whole area of doing these interviews and other online media stuff, podcasts and radio show interviews that I started over 5 years ago in self-defense because I live in a suburb of Houston without a lot of good transit options. And so I thought to myself, if I can't meet people face-to-face, what can I do instead? And the next week, I get an opportunity to do a radio show on Blog Talk Radio that ended up becoming a weekly thing for about 6 months. And then that led to me doing more and more shows. But people would write me emails. They'd go, Mac, how do you do this? Would you tell me how? And I would send them these long, really, really long emails, tell them everything I know. And finally, a good friend of mine, Michael Babcock, wrote back, he said, Max, you can't keep giving people all this information and all this expertise and all this experience when you could be using it to take care of yourself and your family. This could be your thing, is what he eventually ended up saying. It turned out that I decided to try it on a voluntary basis for 2 or 3 people to see if what worked for me would work for other people. And it worked so well that I've now got 3 regular paying clients. And Whereas before, I would send people emails or direct messages and never hear back from them. Now, when I contact people about what I do, we at least have a conversation, and sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, but it's a whole lot more positive, affirming thing to be offering a service where people actually are interested. Because trust me, it was like crickets chirping when I would contact people for coaching.
So it's in positioning in the way that we're looking at it and recognizing the value in what we're doing. And you just gave a perfect example of a way you took part of your knowledge and monetized it. I will share a story of something too, where taking something that a company had already been doing, and this was a company that I worked for. So a long, long time ago, there was one of my companies, my first company, was acquired by Digital River. And during my time with Digital River, which was very informative, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of great people, and boy, did I build a lot of skills and confidence and have to face a lot of that controlled, don't get in my space because I really am the expert and I can't really tell you that I really don't want to see that I'm not kind of place, right? So I was really early on in my career. And
very territorial when it came to ideas and information and experience.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of my colleagues, his name is Pete Olson, came up with this idea of something we were already doing that our clients were taking for granted and didn't understand the value of, and decided to put a price around it and came up with this idea. And it was easy to implement. It made money for us and for our clients, and everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. And it was because he chose to look at something. In their language, in their organization, they called it low-hanging fruit. What are the things we can do with the least amount of resources that can get us some sort of return on something? Bottom line, longer client relationships, shorter sales cycle, all of those things. And this was one of those. He was mulling it around and came up with this. And it's an absolute amazing idea because he stopped. He decided that there's got to be something we're taking for granted, and then went and found it. And sure enough, like the example that you said, there was something there that had value that was overlooked. Kudos to you for being willing and open to listen to that, Max, because a lot of people are like, oh, I can't do that, whatever. Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah,
that's not the way I want to be. And we need to be.
I will take the credit for being willing to change, but I will also take the penalty for taking this long to accept and to move forward. Back to what you were saying about low-hanging fruit. Once I accepted that this was something people wanted and needed and would pay for, which that last part's really important, y'all, I realized I'm doing all of this research for me. I'm collecting all this information as far as show websites, host names, producers' names, contact. I'm doing all this work for me that I could easily be taking that information and then just adapting the pitch email for whatever client who might also be a good fit for some of these same opportunities that I've already been through.
Yes, yes. And here's the thing. You've been through yours. I've been through mine. Everybody listening has been through theirs. And it's by talking about it. It's by taking the time to share our experience that when we are open, we can learn from each other. And I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from this too, because it's when we build these ideas. And that's what the Voice of Bold Business Radio is really about. I know a lot about a lot of things. I can always learn more. And that's one of the things I do for this show is it helps me continue to learn more. It helps me figure out what are the things that I can find answers to, not only for myself, for my clients, for the people that are listening to this show, that can really help them be the leader that they want to be, especially because nobody will take care of us except for us. And we have to remember that. Nobody will take care of us except for us. We can always ask for help. And there are those around us that will give us their support and their help. We still have to invest in ourselves.
We still have to put that time and our money or both into it. I now also do my own show. It hasn't been around as long as yours, nowhere near as consistent as yours. But the one thing I love about it is it gives me this great opportunity to call people up or email them and go, hey, I would like to have you on my show so we can talk about whatever. So I've already been blessed to have conversations with some great people who have dispensed some information and advice that I had never heard before as well. Doing a show like this, I'm sure it's great for you and your clients. And for those people who don't know anything about you at all, they can learn a lot by watching the way you have these conversations and the way you openly put yourself out there. I don't think today was the first time that you were what we would call raw on the air with your personal emotions and experiences. That's the kind of thing people can't find out as easily from a blog post or from communicating with you through email. But if they watch one of these interviews, they're going to know what kind of person they're thinking about hiring.
That's true. Hey, thank you for that compliment. I want to stop and acknowledge that because I don't want to let that go by. And I also realized we have something in common. We both like to talk to strangers.
I like to say that I'm great at turning strangers into friends. So
yes, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about some of the things that you were sharing. And we've talked about a lot. We've talked about our expectations that get in the way, which allow us to create and hold excuses. We talk about the reasons that might get in our way, the fact that we're accepting from others, we're keeping our voice a secret. We even threw in things like love and modern meditation. We have covered the gamut, and it all comes back to and can be tied to the fact that it's up to us. It's up to each one of us. When we recognize an excuse, and you've been sharing some amazing stories, you talked about this concept of asking for help. And if you don't ask, you basically rob somebody of the opportunity to say yes. Tell us, how do you build a personal network that you know you can call on and people will respond to you? Because I know that's something, we can have business connections and we can have online connections and we can have our neighbors, but who are we going to call when we need a ride because our car broke down or the bus broke down or we need to go to the doctor and the way we were planning on getting there didn't happen?
It is really difficult to know who is a true friend and who is an online friend or a fan of what you're doing. One thing I have noticed is that most of my really close friends and contacts that I've met online are not people that I went looking for them. They're people who happen to find me and follow me back to my home website or to my email address. Sometimes when you use the example of you don't have a ride to the doctor and you can't go in the way that you wanted to go, sometimes it comes down to asking somebody you wouldn't have normally thought to ask. And sometimes it comes down to just accepting that today isn't going to be that day that you're going to the doctor. Sometimes you end up having to pay a cab. Sometimes you may have to buy the friend gas money. I think a lot of it just depends on how long you've been building these relationships, how much of yourself you're putting into them. I mean, do these people know Max or do they know the person Max wants them to know? And there are a lot of people who have two different people, the person that you would meet if you came to their door and the person you meet online. They're not the same people. And I think that you probably can tell by now that regardless of where you run into Max, you're going to get the same guy.
It's hard for a lot of people because we do want to portray certain things. We want our professional experience to lead when we are in our business realm. We want our personal values to lead when we are with maybe we want our personal values. Maybe we hide our personal values when we're with people we want to be friends with. And by the way, that still occurs as adults, doesn't it? It never ends. We put forward the thing that we think will attract somebody to us to have that connection with us. And you used the word raw earlier. And I think it's great that you are the same all the time. I aspire to that. And I feel like I've come a long way from when I first started my rodeo as an adult, meaning being out on my own and self-sufficient and supporting myself and then my family also. It's one of those things where every once in a while something comes up and you get star-studded, right? You know there's something that you want and you're like, well, how do I get them to pay attention to me? I think that's where our internal excuses come up. Oh, but they won't. Oh, well, I can't do it that way. Oh, well, I can't really be myself. Oh, this, oh, that. It makes me wonder, tell me, when it comes to excuses, why is it bold to obliterate them, to recognize we have them and get rid of them before they ever have a chance to have a voice?
Well, first off, as we've discussed earlier, excuses don't go away. I have yet to talk to an author, no matter how many books they have published, I've yet to talk to one of them who says that when they send the book off to their publisher or editor or upload it to Amazon, that they don't get the butterflies in their stomach and they don't hear that voice that goes, who the heck do you think you're fooling? Nobody wants to read your stuff. I mean, they don't want to hear what you have to think. I've yet to meet an author who tells me that goes away. And I have to believe it's similar for performers and entertainers. Most of these excuses, they come back onto us during times of weakness or crisis. And I think you used the example of when you know you've got something you don't really want to do, you clean a closet. Sometimes with me, even though I know I should be doing something else, I might listen to an audiobook. I might go ride my bike outside that doesn't go anywhere. I may watch old television episodes that I've seen or heard before, so there's really no point to it. But excuses never go away. The amount of time it takes for us to recognize them and get past them and go, no, you're not going to fool me, at least not today. Maybe you'll get me next week, but you're not going to get me today, and then go about doing what you need to do.
I can't believe how amazing this conversation was. Max used the word raw. I'll use the word real. And within that, we were able to touch on some topics that maybe don't make everyday conversation and are not typically associated with excuses. The fact that we can be both brave and cowardly at the same time. The fact that we might engage in #modern meditation to get the momentum, to take our mind off things so that we can actually have one part of our brain rest and process while we use a different part of our brain for something else. Modern meditation, interesting concept. This concept of asking and getting in our own way. If we don't ask, we're getting in our own way. And Max shared with you his answer. If we don't ask, we take away the opportunity for somebody to say yes. So we know we want our results to be long-lasting. We know we have our own expectations. And when we can recognize those and say, hey, okay, how real is that? Then what we can do is we can practice being fully present in each moment, recognizing the excuses as they're walking toward us and starting to show up, instead of waiting until being in the middle of it, so that we can make the choice that we want to live fully. And remember, you can find all the program notes for today's show at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P104. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 104. You also may search the website for No Excuses. You're defining what it means to be a leader today, how straightforward you are, how forthcoming you are, how candid you are. And it's through that thinking and through that practice of interaction that we are able to understand our role. And we can then say with confidence, there are no excuses.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Shoot, I'm going to, Scott, we need a PS at the end. You know what we totally forgot to do? Max, we forgot to have you sing to us. So I want a serenade from you that we can do after the show is over, but I want to include it because I know you love to sing, and I've seen your shows where you sing to us.
And if you've seen those, you know that I always tell the host, never ask a singer if they want to sing, because the answer will never be no.
Exactly. And I totally forgot. We got sidetracked into that great conversation. So I want you to sing for us at Voice of Bold Business Radio.
Okay. All right. Too many times we stand aside and let the water slip away, till what we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids and dare to dance the tide. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Like a bird upon the wind, these waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel until the river runs dry.